Dagda Agus Falcha. Hi, hello, and welcome to John O'Sullivan from the Irish Pagan School, here with the continuance of our 90-day challenge in YouTube. So we have hit, coming up on mid-March, and we set this 90-day challenge for ourselves at the start of the year, and it will come to an end at the end of March. Of course, I just went and had a look at this point in reverse, this thing over my shoulder on the wall. That is our annual calendar. We do that every year, and we kind of lay out the class structures, what's going to be when, family holidays. I include the birthdays because I'm terrible at remembering birthdays. But I went and I did the count. I counted how many days are left, and given that they're split between Laura and myself, it turns out the last day on the 31st of March actually falls as a John video. So that's interesting. And I don't know what to do. And I don't know, maybe between you and me, I might talk to Laura and see if we can maybe do a live video, who knows, or an ask us anything kind of thing. That might be fun. If you think that might be fun, or that's something that could be interest, please let us know in the comments, because we are kind of looking at that and trying to get an idea of, how do we finish this off? Because we want to honor the amount of effort that we put in and the amount of kind of connection that we have built with all of you who do join us in these videos. And those of you who have turned up on a regular basis, we see you in the comments. We see the regular names coming up, and we're delighted. Ronnie, I don't know who you are, but you're a legend. Delighted to see you in the comments over and over again. And thank you very much for all of the great words of support you're giving to us. And everybody else as well. Ronnie was the first name to pop into my mind. So shout out for Ronnie. But yeah, everyone who has kind of started to engage with us here and, pop their comments down, pop their questions in, and hit the like and the subscribe and stuff. It is really, really great, and I really, really appreciate it. So again, just if you didn't catch it at the end of the last video, we won't be disappearing from YouTube fully, but we will kind of roll it down to one video a week, one from Laura, one from myself. So there'll be 2 videos a week, one from each of us, and there probably will be an extra video over in the Irish Pagan School Patreon page. So that's where, if you do feel like you want to engage with us from a support point of view, send us a couple of quid to buy a coffee on a regular basis or whatever, that is what that is there for. Again, not everyone has to. We're not it's there you go. See that's the Irish kind of post-colonial trauma, almost like going hand in hand, or I'm not looking for handouts or anything like that at all. But some people do contact us like, geez, I wish I could buy you a coffee or something, or send you a couple of quid whenever I have. That's what that is there for. Personally, I would say save you a couple of quids, look after yourselves whenever you can, and if you can save up, buy one of the classes. Because that's really where we want to kind of push the focus and the intent, because that's where that drive for us comes from, that kind of right relationship and that kind of getting as much real information and native information out there as we can. Speaking of which, I will be facilitating an amazing class there this evening. This is the 13th of March, 2022. If you are seeing this in future time, you probably missed out on the class, but it will be in recordings. We have Dr. Gillian Kenny coming along to teach again with our class and with our school, the Irish Pagan School, and it's on witches and witch hunting in Ireland. So she's an absolute legend and a really, really fantastic teacher, and we're delighted to have her on board with our school. So where was I going to go? Like I went through all the comments, and there's so many amazing questions that I wish I could answer. And I wish I could answer everyone as much as I can. But a lot of times I will just do another video, and there may already be a video in the playlist. Like someone asked me, do a video on Deankect. Well, it's actually the one about the healing herbs. It's kind of mostly about Deankect, but I didn't label it Deankect. So that is actually there. There was questions about Curoi. Do a video on Curoi. I don't know enough about Curoi. I've my area of expertise or study. My personal study has been in a mythological cycle. Curoi is a figure of Munster kingship in the Ulster cycle, which follows the mythological cycle of text and information. The whole Tombo Coolia, the Cuchulainn, the Queen Maeve, the Cattle Cooley, all the rest of that. Curoi is a big kind of figure in that. And actually, he is the one who inspired the myth, the Arthurian myth of the Green Knight, Gawain and the Green Knight. So if anyone, I was raised on the Arthurian myths. I really, really was. The whole chanson de geste when I was a kid were amazing for me. I loved the whole idea of chivalrous, honorly way of existing within your life. And of course, unfortunately, when you look at the history, it was actually these lads who were privileged, entitled because of nobility and land ownership and stuff, that they could, have their, what were they? The laws of chivalry, which are actually more about chevalier, which is about being a horse owner. And if you owned a horse, you were wealthy. This whole knighthood kind of thing. I could get onto that in a different topic. Maybe I should. But anyway, there's this Arthurian myth of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, which is this Green Knight who's under a curse and volunteers to have his head lopped off if any of the brave knights of the Round Table will do it, as long as he gets to cut their head off a year later. And Gawain is the only one to step up to that. But that actually has its origins in Irish mythology with Cú Chraith. So I don't know enough about Cú Chraith. I will be doing more exploration. And again, thank you very much. Gosh, I don't have your name. I'm really sorry. But it's really great when you ask these questions, because it does, as I've always said, a question is an opportunity to learn more, an opportunity to consider what you don't know and kind of like take yourself along the rabbit holes and kind of figure stuff out as you can go. There was a question about doing a video on Oma. I actually did a video on Oma, the champion of the Tuatha Danann. It doesn't have my face on it. I was toying with the, do I do front screens and that kind of stuff? But apparently, according to our eldest, branding now at this point is the face, because people see me and they're like, I'd like to listen to John for a few minutes. So there is a video by me on Oma there. And it was Danny. Danny asked that question, and they also asked about writing. I've said that I am a writer, and my passion and my devotion really is for the Dagda, the good god of the Tuatha Danann, and he is the person I write for. And so I set myself a challenge to write a story every month. And that's where my own Patreon kind of came from. And I did audio recordings of those stories over there as well. But the question that Danny asked, they asked about writing devotional offerings, as in the wordings. Now, I personally don't or haven't done that as yet. Haven't done that as yet because I might. Laura has a great book. It's down there on the bookshelf behind me. It is a practical guide to pagan priesthood, and a section in that is about writing devotional prayers and offerings, as I recall, because she discusses the idea of priesthood in a broader kind of term, not in a particular dogmatic or religious kind of pathway. It's just let me get it right, the pastoral and the sacerdotal duties of someone who's stepping into that role of priesthood. So there is parts of that which do talk about devotive offerings. For me, to answer Danny's question, really, the effort that I put in and the energy I put in, the studying of the older stories, the learning of that, and then the time and the energy that I put into writing those stories and then getting them out there, that is actually my offering to the Dagda, as much as I'm saying the Dagda out loud every day. So, other small questions too. Now, again, these aren't small questions. I don't mean it as diminutive. I mean it that there's so many of these kind of little kind of questions that wouldn't kind of take up a full video. And so I have been trying to scoop all of those up and put them in the back file in my brain. But that is the blessing and the curse of Bard Brain. Sometimes the Bard Brain becomes as messy as my desk, and there's too many pieces of paper all over the place. So I have to maybe just take a bit of time and just talk them on it. Other things that are going on with us here is not just the school. Again, I know I've dated this video by talking about it, but it will be available on download. And that is one thing, again, that we do at the Irish Pagan School. If you can't make the live recording of the class, you don't miss out on all of it. You get the recordings after the fact. It also means that you can go back in and re-listen to it whenever you feel you have the time or you want to capture more information about it or further study. So that is a very important feature for both myself and for Laura, for all of those kind of paid classes and stuff that we actually do. The free classes are not available for download because we ran into some concerns really about people kind of taking advantage of the free content that we were delivering. Now, again, it's not the majority. We always work from a position of honor and honesty. That is one of our main kind of mottos as well. And we put it out into the community, the right people will connect and the right people will kind of grow and they'll benefit from it. But if anyone starts taking advantage of the stuff that is, if it has happened, I'll be honest, people have taken the information that both Laura and myself have worked really hard to present and really hard to kind of teach on and to share from the native perspective, and then appropriated that to try and leverage themselves further forward. Again, that is on them. It is down to them. Whatever way they're going to live their life, they're going to live their life. but we tried to focus on how we can better our community where we are. Like you're never going to be able to get along with everyone in the world. All you can do is try your best you can to work towards equilibrium. Actually, funny story, not so funny story. I'm a dog owner. You may or may not know this about me. I have a Jack Russell, and yes, his name is Russell. It's not Jack, it's Russell. I got him as a pup, and I was first time I met him, first time I was talking to him, I was like, so what am I going to call you? And I was like, am I going to call you Jack? And he's like looking around and sniffing all, and I was like, will I call you Russell? And that's the first time he made eye contact with me. He looked up at me, and I was like, well, there it is. Yeah. So he is now 16 years old. He's been with me for 16 years. That's pretty much all of his life. As soon as he could be away from his mom, he was kind of with me. And I absolutely adore him. I love him. He has saved my life and my sanity in many different ways in the past. But he's an anxious dog. He just is. He's quite old now. And I was out walking him this morning with Laura, and I always walk him on a lead. It's an extendable lead, so he has enough room to go around and explore his area and his get all his sniffs done and whatever else. But there are lead laws in many places in Ireland, and it is about controlling and having control over your animals and proper kind of conscientious pet care. But not everyone adopts those. And we had an incident this morning where this large dog kind of caught a beeline of Russell and came straight toward us. And so I brought Russell back in, and I called to the dog and told him to go away. But the dog ignored me, and Laura stepped in front of the dog. And that's when Laura got shouted at by a guy. It's like, what are you doing? And it's like, can you control your dog, please? At which point the guy absolutely went off on one about how dare, he be questioned about his control of his dogs. And I was like, listen, can you have a bit of respect here? The dog is anxious. And he's like, well, you shouldn't have a dog then. And the reason why I'm telling this story, it was because it was one of the most overt expressions of toxic masculinity I have personally experienced in quite a while. And it shocked me, and I was upset about it. But I wasn't upset for me. I was a little bit upset for Russell, because Russell doesn't have that attitude. Laura takes care of Laura, so the person I was most upset for, though, is anyone who knows that man, anyone who has that man in their life, because there, no doubt, if he can be as bald-faced, aggressive, and like verbally abusive to strangers who have just asked him to look after his dog in public, then what is he like behind closed doors? What is he like to the people in his life? And that was very saddening for me. I often talk about feeling your feelings. I say it time and again, it's almost funnily referred to as them as Dagda rules. If you've caught my video before on the 3 strains of emotion, it is in there. It's about Dagda's connection with being able to bring forward emotion from people using the art of music. But it is about then the healthy rebalancing of that emotion that I have found within my own life. And so really the summation of that rule is you got to feel your feelings. The only way to deal with your feelings is to feel your feelings, but know that they're temporary, know that they don't define you forever. It is just something you experience for a period of time. And I experienced anger because, how fucking dare he? And I then kind of realized my anger was of no use in that way. So I had to let that go. I chose to let that go and make that as an offering to my God, for him to take the energy of my anger and do with it what is just. So, I don't curse people. I don't there's a very well recognized practice of cursing within the Irish tradition, within the Irish medieval, and even more modern practices. Like it is well understood that is part of justice in many ways. I personally don't engage with that, but I, trust that my deity knows a lot better how to deal with things than I do. But I then did feel emotion, lots of emotion, and fear and sadness. The fear and sadness came on me, and Laura was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No, I'm okay. It's my fear and sadness for all of the people who that individual harms with their toxicity, with their aggression." And it was unwarranted. It was an explosion of verbal abuse and aggressive posturing just because he was challenged over how he raises his dogs. He actually went so far as to call me fat. So thanks. It was kind of pot kettle black situation there as well, because maybe that's part of his own personal damage. But I will probably have more compassion for those who have to live with an individual like that, as opposed to that individual themselves. Actually, that's unfair. That's actually unfair. He probably has damage himself. He probably doesn't know how to process it properly. He probably never was given the tools to live an emotionally balanced life or an emotionally intelligent life. But again, my compassion can only go so far if someone is choosing to be that aggressive about it. So yeah, that's been my day. Wow. Yeah, that's a little bit about what's going on here. We're driving ahead. We're like, rocking along, being as busy as we can. And I just thought, like, being real about things, which is one thing that we do get here, and one thing we really strive for, this authenticity, and not just in our educational approach, but also in how we present ourselves and who we are. And so, that's something that I experienced great difficulty on today. But maybe the reason why I'm sharing this story with you is to show that, like, I don't want this to come across in the wrong way, but many people in my community, many of the people who are our students or in our Live at 5 groups, they look to me as their dad. When I'm telling the bad dad jokes, they're like, it's the dad jokes, but also as an example to be aware. And I take it with great humility, because if I'm able to help them in some way, then that makes it all worthwhile. But it does make it important to talk about those examples, talk about those difficult times when they come up, because the default programming in the North Dublin guy who was raised in a rough and tumble area was to square up to him, get up physically into his face, and like have a go at him for how dare he talk to my wife that way. But that's the programming talking. That's not a healthy way to address that. That's not a balanced way to understand it. And it would be disrespectful to Laura and Laura's ability to look after herself. So, we dealt with it in the way we could deal with it, but it's difficult within the moment to choose our behavior as opposed to default to the programming. And so this was an example where someone defaulted to their programming as a toxic male who was questioned on their ability to control their dogs, and then resorted to aggression and, aggressive speak, aggressive body language and posturing as well. So it's important. It's important to, especially for you guys out there, if there's any kind of male presenting people here, and, I include trans men in that too, because trans men coming up, like, they're looking around for masculinity and looking around for like, what is masculinity? And I've had trans men contact me as like, I've had difficulty identifying as masculine because their understanding of masculinity was always around dominating personalities or aggression, because that's what is presented. That's what the media shares, like this very macho male persona elements, which are part of the toxic behavior and part of the patriarchal power structure. And so, any male presenting person needs to be aware of where their programming sits and how, even in the moment of upset or when the emotion is upon you, you can still choose. You're not disempowered. You still have conscientious choice and free will, even in those difficult moments. Unless, of course, you're a frenzied berserker, but that means you've got different problems altogether. And I'll talk about that at a different time, maybe when I talk about Cuchulainn. So yes, I will eventually get there to talk about Cuchulainn, but that is not today. So I will say thank you very much for being here with us. This has been a bit of a rant. This one, actually, when I save this video down and kind of upload it, I will have to classify this one as a rant. But again, I don't go off on a rant without trying to bring it to some point. As the saying goes, what's the moral of the story? The moral of the story is you have choice. Always. And anyone who claims that they don't, it might be because their programming, their position, like their society, their culture has disempowered them. but anyone who isn't specifically targeted at disempowered either by race, ethnicity, or gender, or power structures, systematic abuse, or anything like that at all. You know, within any given moment, you have a choice of how you choose to act, even when the emotion is upon you. And I think it's even more important that when the big emotions are upon you, you still practice some way of choosing, setting the intentionality around it. You know, I could have reacted from my anger. I could have reacted very easily from my pre-programmed circumstances as a North Dublin roughhead. But it's about choice. And we're actually more empowered when we choose, as opposed to when we just go with our programming. So, yeah, this has been a rant. This has been John Rants again. And thank you very much for being here. If you have stuck it out to the end of the video, I really appreciate it. And thank you for being with us in the group. As I said, the videos aren't going to go away. There will be a slight lessening. We will have some more over on Patreon. But as ever, make sure you're on the mailing list, because as the kind of content comes out, even if you're not here in the likes and subscribes, you know, there is lots of resources that we do put the effort and energy into. And even, like, as I said, the email list, it's not just a sales list, because that's one thing we're very conscious of here. Like this channel, you will have never seen a single ad from us on this channel. And that was our complete intent. We're not monetizing off this YouTube channel. In the same way, like the email list, we want to provide some resources on the go, provide connection to what's happening in the school, provide connection to, like, you know, the communities, the Live at 5 invites, and then, you know, the emails notifying that these classes are actually going on as well. So we do find that sometimes, you know, well, actually, no, I have found that personally when I sign up for a mailing list and suddenly it's all just sale. It was like, actually, no, that was not what I was looking for. So we're conscious of the impact of that. And so if you are nervous about joining the mailing list, you know, give it a shot. And hey, worst comes to worst, unsubscribe. It's all good. So thank you very much for being here to rant. Thank you for joining me. I will do my best to kind of keep on board and answer any of the questions as they come up. And until next time, look after yourself, take care of yourself, and slán. Goodbye.